We are just about ready to begin our Crossfire Stump the Rabbi panel. I noticed that there were a couple of folks that left earlier as the night was wearing on, but they're back for Stump the Rabbi. So the way this is going to work, this is the one that I have a little bit of a challenge with Zoom, and hopefully this will work, because we're gonna enter speaker mode in just a moment. Whoever is talking will be the person that you'll see on your screen. So you'll have to pardon me if you have some of these technical glitches where one person is talking and another person is talking. But that's the best feature that I was able to think of that we can use for this part of the program. Let me begin, I guess, by introducing our panelists. So first of all, welcome to Crossfire, Stump the Rabbi. This has been very, very well received here in Pasadena. We do this twice a year. We do it once in January at the Chabad of Torah, the 25 hours. Shabbat afternoon after the Kiddush. We shoot rapid fire questions from the crowd, some that have been submitted in advance and some that have not, at the rabbis, and we try to get the best answers that we can. We do it again on Shavuot night. Usually we do it at 4 a.m. That's the best time to ask rabbis questions. But this year we're doing it at 10 p.m. We need everybody to get a good night's sleep tonight, because as we've mentioned before in this program, tomorrow night is really the night we should be staying up. So hopefully you've all received or will receive your booklet from Chabad of Pasadena, the Do-It-Yourself Shavuot, in which you have lots of things that you can learn tomorrow night. So I guess let me start by introducing our panelists, and then I will go through some of the rules. Rabbi Eli Rivkin from Chabad of Northridge is my dear brother-in-law. This is a question I have to answer very often. His last name is Rivkin, but he's my brother-in-law. My sister married a Rivkin. But more importantly, he is a wise fellow and a very well-learned fellow. I very often ask him some of my questions on my own. And I see that there are some people joining from Northridge. So welcome to those that are joining from Northridge, or those from Northridge that are on YouTube. If you'd like to share this with your friends, it can be found on yidtalks.org. That's yidtalks.org. So welcome, Rabbi Eli. Rabbi Eli hails originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, but he's been a rabbi at the community in Northridge, which many of you know that if I'm not here for Shabbos, I'm in one of two places. One of them is Northridge. Rabbi Mendel Pinson is making his debut on the Stump the Rabbi Crossfire stage, and he comes from Pasadena all the way on Chester, on the other side of the freeway, and he grew up here in Pasadena. And we're very happy that the fact that he got his semicha and he's become a rabbi and he's sharing with us his knowledge. Of course, his mother and father, Rabbi Yisrael and Chani Pinson, are rabbi and rebbitzin here as part of the community. And I saw them before in the crowd watching from one of the other accounts. This is one of the funny realities of coronavirus, that sometimes we have multiple Zooms coming in from multiple rooms in the same house. We get a multiple angle view. So welcome, Mendel. Thank you for being here with us. Rabbi Hershy Stolik is also joining us from Pasadena, from up the road on Hill. Rabbi Stolik runs the Chabad Student Center. And as we mentioned earlier, he services Caltech, PCC, Occidental College, as well as some other campuses here in the area. If you know of any students that are Jewish, please send them Rabbi Hershy's way. He does a phenomenal job of servicing them, normally with Friday night meals as one of his staples, but now Rabbi Stolik and I have spoken about some of the creative things that he's been doing over the phone, over Zoom, with students that are obviously no longer at Caltech now or on their campuses, but remotely. So welcome, Rabbi Stolik. And of course, last but certainly not least, we always start from the ABCs, right? We do my esteemed, the venerable, the honorable, my dear father-in-law, the senior rabbi here at Chabad of Pasadena, who's joining us from the other room. I'm in Yaakov's library and he's in his office, so hopefully you won't get any feedback of hearing me or him double or triple. Okay, and now for the rules. There are 19 questions that I have here on the paper in front of me, which have been submitted in advance. And they come from people in our community, in the Northridge community, and from throughout, anybody who's on our email list, to be honest. Those questions have been given to the rabbis like that they can prepare. Sometimes it's very difficult to formulate your thoughts in the moment, so they've been able to prepare them. But hopefully if this won't take too long, we're going to try to limit this to an hour. We started about 5 minutes ago, so we'll try to end at about 10:45-ish, right, Jewish time. We will we will hopefully be able to open the floor after we're done these 19 questions to have questions coming from the audience. In any event, we would love for you to type in your questions, whether we'll have time for them or not. We'd love to address them at some other point, or the rabbis will reach out to you personally to answer it. So if you have any questions throughout tonight's program, please feel free to type them into the chat. Text them to me, text them to Rabbi Hanoka. You can still submit them via the form, which was sent in an email earlier today. That's a way to do it anonymously, etc. Okay. Each question will be addressed by the MC, by myself, to a particular rabbi. So I'll tell you, Rabbi Hanoka, and then I'll give the question, and then you'll get 60 questions to answer 60 seconds to answer the question. I'll beg your forgiveness, all four of the venerable rabbis, for cutting you off. I will do so, and I will do so for the sake of time. Like that, you can we can get to as many questions as we can tonight. We will open it after those 60 seconds. If any other panelist who was not designated for that question wants to chime in, they will have 45 seconds to answer or to contribute or to finish the answer if I cut them off. After we finish all the pre-submitted questions, we'll open the floor by raise of hand from the audience or in the chat box, etc. Let's see if we can stump our panelists. What do you guys say, huh? Let's give a warm welcome to all of our panelists. Let's get a round of applause for all of our rabbis, Rabbi Hanoka, Rabbi Pinson, Rabbi Stolik, and Rabbi Rivkin. Thank you all for joining us. Okay. I think the way to do this now is like this. This should work. And here we go. So my first question is for Rabbi Rivkin, Rabbi Eli Rivkin. Is Jewish guilt a positive or negative thing? 60 seconds.
That's a great question. I think the answer is yes. Yes, in the sense that it can be positive and it can be negative, depending on what it leads to. In Tanya, they talk about atzvus and merirus, melancholy and bitterness. Atzvus is a sense of a person is feeling guilty about something, they're upset about something, and it leads to giving up, versus merirus, bitterness, which is a form of guilt, of self-analysis, but it brings to action, brings to improvement. So yes, it just depends in which direction it's being taken.
Okay, thank you very much. Rabbi, if any of the other rabbis want to chime in at any point, you are always welcome to cut me off, and I'll give you your 45 seconds. Rabbi Pinson.
I'm all for giving Jews guilt.
All right, sounds good. Rabbi Pinson, Rabbi Mendel Pinson, what is the origin of Chassidus? Why does Chabad place such a great emphasis on it? Aren't we Jews? Don't we have a Torah to focus on? 60 seconds.
So the question of what's the origin of Chassidus, actually, Chassidus is not a separate Torah. It's actually part of the Torah. So in truth, it's been around just as long as the Torah has been around, which is even before creation. It's eternal. And the reason why we put such a amazing, great stress on Chassidus, the need for it in this generation, because it wasn't revealed to everyone before the Baal Shem Tov. It was revealed in the year 1734. So the reason why it's so important now, the Rabbi actually brings a parable, which the story is a king who had an only son, and suddenly one day he became very, very ill, and the doctor said that the only way he can be cured is if they take the crown jewel, which is like the most precious thing in the entire kingdom, and crush it up and mix it in a solution, and then the prince can drink it, and it would cure him. And some people were thinking, it's crazy, can you do that? It's so precious. But the king took it, and actually it was able to save the prince, even though there were so many doubts if it would help. So the same idea, Chassidus is the hidden parts of the Torah, it's secrets, and it's so precious. However, because in our generation we're in such a state where we're right before the time of Mashiach's coming, it's extra important to have that extra dosage of Torah learning, which is Chassidus, to keep us going.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Pinson. That was brave of you to stick a parable in there. I wasn't sure you'd get it in the 60 seconds. Rabbi Stolik, I definitely don't want the panel to discuss politics. Oh, these questions are always great. But I am sure the one thing we can all agree on is the level of mishigas out there. Is there a bright side to all the political craziness? 60 seconds.
My answer is short and sweet. You stumped the rabbi. I don't know the answer. I do know that there was a time that the Rabbi addressed a medrash that said about the nations going into chaos, which this may be included as well, show that it was a sign for the coming of Mashiach. What the connection, what the internal connection is, I don't remember now, but perhaps this may be part of it somehow. But again, overall, I don't have an answer. If I want to add in, I get 20 seconds just to mention the first question that was asked to Rabbi Rivkin.
Sure, go ahead.
I agree with this statement of Rabbi Rivkin. I want to add that it can come from two different places, positive guilt and negative guilt. Just like we have positive carbs and negative carbs, there's positive guilt and negative guilt. Positive guilt comes from your goodness that's in you, that wants you to do good. And when you do something bad, he's not satisfied. He wants you to change your ways because you have a spark of kindness. And your negative guilt wants you to do bad. You're planning on doing good things in your life, and he just wants to bog you down and stop you from doing good things. So not just where, the way of knowing is like Rabbi Rivkin mentioned, is where it's actually leading to. That's the way to know where it's coming from. But it's important to remember that it actually stems from two different places and two different parts of you.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Hanoka, can you offer an answer to the age-old question, why do bad things happen to good people? We always give you the easy ones.
I'm glad, and I thank you for that. I'm going to talk to you when we're done with this for a few minutes. Why do bad things happen to good people? I think what we perceive as bad is something which is open to our own perspectives. In reality, in God's world, whatever he does for us is not bad. We may perceive it as bad because our limited nature or limited understanding, we lack the peripheral vision to be able to see beyond our individual lives. And while it may be a bad experience, as we call it, but in reality, deep down, whatever Hashem does for us, he does for the best. That's a famous axiom from one of our sages. And invariably calling, or I guess the question in and of itself is a misnomer by asking why do bad things happen to good people, because in reality, bad things don't really happen, period.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Rivkin, why isn't there just one way of doing things? One kosher, one davening, one way to speak the language? After all, we have one God. Why do we splinter?
Because one way would be incredibly boring. Imagine you go to an art gallery and all the paintings have just one color. And God created a world with multiple species, billions of types of living organisms, and it's a beautiful world because of its differences. And it's the same thing within human beings and the same thing within Judaism. There's a famous thing that to enter the Temple Mount in Jerusalem in ancient times, there were 13 gates. For the 12 tribes of Israel, each one had their own path, their own way of entering, so to speak, the house of Hashem. And then there was a 13th gate for those who didn't know the right way to go. And that 13th gate was for everybody. So we see the idea that from the beginning, there are differences, there are different paths, but then there's also the idea of an all-encompassing path, a path that sort of can include everybody. And it's interesting, when the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, wrote his Siddur, he said that all the different versions of prayer, his Siddur is like the 13th gate. It is a path of prayer which encompasses all the different paths. So.
Thank you, Rabbi Pinson. Why must kosher butchers salt the meat for sale? Can't we trust educated and pious Yehudim, Jews, to properly care for the kashrut of their own food?
So the answer to that question is yes. We could trust people to salt their meat, and actually, in fact, we can actually trust them to slaughter their meat also, to be a shochetz. Back in the day in the shtetl, everyone would process their own. They would make their own meat, and they would make their own almost a lot of things. They wouldn't have factories. It wasn't industrial back then. But nowadays, because everything is done on a greater scale, it's just less practical and more difficult to do it, because you have to get the meat salted within 3 hours from when it's shechted, from when it's slaughtered, and it has to be done in a specific way where there's the blood that was in the meat can drain, so it either has to be on a sloped surface or with holes in it. So because it's such a long process, it won't be practical to have everyone doing it themselves. But yes, if you'd like to do it yourself, you're welcome to do that.
If you're a DIY kind of guy, you can do that. Thank you very much. Rabbi Stolik, does praying for Mashiach imply ingratitude for the lives that we have?
My kids sometimes ask me why we don't have, especially during Corona, my daughter would ask me why we are all a guest. I don't think she's not happy. I don't disencourage that question. I actually encourage that question, even though maybe she's not happy with what's going on. It's something that I look forward to. If a child would ask their parent for a better education, it's a question that the parents happily receive. Our request for Mashiach is something that Hashem wants us to hear, and He is awaiting to hear our requests and prayers to take us out of exile.
Rabbi Hanoka, I'm sort of embarrassed to even ask this question, but I think I heard in one of the classes that in Jewish law, you are supposed to tie your left shoelace first. I can confirm this is correct. Is that true? And if so, why in the world would God care which shoelace I tie first?
The answer is yes, that is true. You put on your right shoe if you're right-handed. Right shoe, then left shoe, tie your left shoe, and then your right shoe. In reality, all of the nuances in Jewish law, as insignificant as they may seem to you and I, are obviously very significant to God. Otherwise, He would not have given them to us. I guess it would be somewhat akin to someone who knows next to nothing or doesn't really understand medicine or biology, how the human body works. And let's say, for argument's sake, the human body is made up of, I don't know how many millions or billions of cells. You say, well, what's the big deal? I mean, why is it that important that all these cells work and they all do exactly what they're supposed to do? We got so many of them, you know what I mean? Another cell here, another cell there. If they go awry, it's not the end of the world. But we all know that obviously if the cells don't do what they're supposed to do, God forbid, you can have all kinds of horrible diseases. Albeit as being that I'm certainly not a medical doctor, and perhaps many others on this are not either, we may not understand the significances of each and every one of those little cells, as microscopic as they may be. The same thing applies all the more so when it comes to any spiritual practices that God endows us to do. They actually have a deep reasoning, and ultimately gives us a deep responsibility to fulfill them by the mere fact that God asked us to do it. Obviously, this is something which is important to God and invariably should be important to us as well.
Thank you very much. It's all about the details. I want to give a little shout out to those that are watching on YouTube. I know you're not in the Zoom room with us, but there are about 15 people at last check that we're watching on YouTube. If you'd like to join us in the Zoom, or if anyone here would like to encourage their friends to join us, the website is yidtalks.org. Again, YIDTALKS.org. Rabbi Rivkin from Northridge. Why don't I hear my rabbi talking about heaven, hell, and the afterlife?
Well, I don't know who the questioner is, but often the fire and brimstone comes towards the end of a sermon, and if you're falling asleep halfway through, you're missing the juicy part at the end. But perhaps the question is, in other words, why don't I hear my rabbi talking about spirituality and the life of a soul? And maybe there the answer is that you're in the wrong synagogue. No, that you're there definitely is spirituality in Judaism, and it's a very important part of Judaism. Unfortunately, in some circles, it's de-emphasized. Perhaps decades ago, it's because people were afraid of spirituality and they shied away from it. But certainly from a Chabad and Hasidic perspective, the spiritual side and the spiritual discussion and the life of the soul is perhaps even more prominent than our material side. So those ideas are definitely there.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Mendel Pinson, why do we spend so much time in prayer talking about how great God is? Does his self-esteem require a boost?
So the answer to that is, of course, God doesn't need a boost in his self-esteem. God is unlimited and is not actually, in truth, affected, so to speak, by our actions. For whatever reason, Hashem decided that he wants us to do mitzvahs and different things. The purpose for us to praise him, and actually all the things in prayer, which is asking him for things and all these things we do in prayer, is in order to make us realize that if Hashem is so great, that we keep saying throughout davening, throughout prayer, that Hashem is so great, etc. We say so many terms for it. We're going to realize that we are so insignificant. And even though we're so seemingly insignificant, Hashem still decided to give us a mission to make this world a better place, to make a dwelling place for him down here. So this is a really inspiring and empowering thought that will help us, do whatever we need to do. So yeah, and tefillah is actually from the word connection. It doesn't actually mean prayer. It translates to connection. It's all about connecting to Hashem.
Thank you very much. Some very, very helpful insights. Rabbi Stolik, this is a very personal question, it seems like. It's for this person. My rabbi, hopefully they're on the Zoom now. I'm not sure if I see them, but it's hard to look through the whole list. My rabbi is always nudging me to do one more mitzvah. I wonder who the rabbi is. I'm a businessman, a results-oriented person, so I am looking for a return on my investment in Judaism. My question is simple. Can being a better Jew improve my love life? Rabbi Stolik, 60 seconds.
I have 4 things to share. I'm not sure what I'll get to in 60 seconds. Number 1, before doing a mitzvah, it may be difficult, but everybody knows once the mitzvah is done, they're happy and they're content about the fact that they've done something meaningful and something real. Content is a very important component in a relationship. Someone that's emotionally missing can cause to some unstableness somewhat, and it's a very important ingredient in a relationship. Second of all, it teaches us, performing a mitzvah teaches us to give, which is a foundation of love. Love means have, means to give. It doesn't just mean to be in a relationship to receive, but the primary idea of a relationship is to give. And performing a mitzvah trains you to give. Third thing is, a relationship requires, everybody knows, a relationship has 2 opposite sides almost, and it needs God's help to bring both opposites together. Being involved in a godly act enhances God's presence in that relationship, and therefore gives God's hand in making that relationship happen. Number 4 is that you knock me off when I'm ready. I don't know, but number 4 is when a person is involved in something spiritual, something holy, something godly, it really picks them up. For a relationship to happen, both sides really need to, at least in the beginning, maybe not later on as the relationship gets much deeper, but at least amongst most people, both sides have to deeply respect the other side. If one of the people are passionate about something deeper in life, they're not just a simple guy that's busy with almost nothing. If somebody has meaning in their life and they're striving to something deeper, it really adds a deep respect from one side to the other. Share one small anecdote. When I was a young boy, I always remember looking at my father when he would study. He was a Talmud teacher. When I saw him studying Talmud, studying Gemara, I would look at him. I want to sometimes sit on his lap and be next to him. It was a great feeling of inspiration just watching him and being next to him. Not just because if he was just studying science, that would be nice, but the fact that he was studying something godly made him be elevated, something meaningful, something greater. And when that becomes your reality as part of a relationship, that really can enhance one's relationship.
59 and 60. Rabbi Hanoka. For various personal reasons, my daughter attends a non-Jewish school. What can I do to minimize the influence of her environment so that she remains Jewish? Told you we gave you the easy ones.
Increase the Jewish environment in your home. The more she sees at home, the more she sees that the parents value Judaism and its traditions, then the more likely that she's going to carry through those traditions and realize they're important in her life as well. And I would encourage her, if at all possible, I don't know what the demographics are at that particular school, but if she can hook up with some of the other Jewish boys or girls, whatever the story may be, kids in that school, and create like a bit of a Jewish club, something along those lines. I don't know if it can be done in school, out of school, sort of in a sense to accentuate the Jewish identity amongst each other, and thus, in a sense, not feel like the odd man out.
I want to add something short.
Go ahead.
To stress on Rabbi Hanoka's second comment, not just in order to be not to be the odd one out, but I believe the primary ingredient is not just to mitigate her negative influence, but she has to become an influencer in some way, either outside of school and if possible, even in a positive way inside school. She has to be not just protecting herself, but she has to be on the offense, actively. I believe that's the only solution, almost the only solution to really grow and not just to survive.
Offense is the best defense.
That's right.
Rabbi Rivkin, you get all the hard questions. Is there really such a thing as a Jewish joke? And if so, what's your favorite and why?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but of course there's a Jewish joke. A Jewish joke is a joke that you have to be Jewish to understand. You know, some Jewish language, some Jewish references. But I think there's also a style of a uniqueness in Jewish humor, in the sense that, you know, obviously Jewish history is filled with, you know, in addition to all of our traditions and history, but we also have plenty of difficulties and persecution and exile. And the fact that Jews have been able to continue to laugh and to celebrate, I think is also sprinkled into Jewish humor. So maybe that's the explanation of a Jewish joke.
He wanted you to say your favorite.
Oh, my favorite Jewish joke. Okay, don't get me started. Real quick, off the top of my head. So in a, what makes a Jewish restaurant unique is that the waiter comes over to you and says, "Is anything okay?"
Very good, thank you. Rabbi Hanoka, you want to add your own joke?
I just, yes, not a joke. No, I'm a very serious person and I'm not known for joking. But I just wanted to add, I think Jews are very good at self-deprecating, certainly within their humor, not to take yourself too seriously and to accentuate what Rabbi Rivkin mentioned, because of all of the difficulties that we've undergone. Historically, we've sort of taken that, instead of, you know, I guess, being mired in the muck of our misery, which we do also in a very good way. We're able to find humor even in the darkest places. So I think it's actually a healthy thing to do.
All right, it looks like we're done with the jokes and now we move on to the stories. Rabbi Pinson, what is the most inspiring Jewish story you heard over the past year? And we're gonna double check this.
The most inspiring, has to be the most. So it was actually less than a year ago, so it qualifies.
Good.
I was volunteering for the Aleph Institute, like you heard from Mrs. Leah Weintraub. And so I was, the mission, right, the goal of our visit was to, you know, try to help them out with anything that they need, both any, you know, if it was keeping mitzvahs on tefillin, etc. And we asked them throughout the year, you know, how did the holidays go? So I was asking one of the inmates, what do they do for Hanukkah with the menorah? Are they able to light it? And he told me that actually they used to be able to, but they had a new warden recently who discontinued the permission that they had because it was a fire hazard, and he gave this reason that it's not safe. So the inmate, you know, asked him, please, is there any exception that you can make for me, because it's very important for us. It's one of the greatest holidays, etc. Explained to him the importance of menorah, and the warden told him that the only way he would allow him to have a menorah is if he lights it by the window, so the guards can see it and make sure there's no fire issues. So yeah, little did he know that the window is actually the proper place for, actually we light near a door, but many people light by a window. He didn't realize that he's actually helping him out, finding the place where the menorah is supposed to go. So the lesson kind of is that, you know, you can see everything in life, even though it may seem like an obstacle, it's really a stepping stone to strive higher and higher.
All right, thank you very much. That was inspiring. Rabbi Stolik, it seems we're done with the jokes and the stories. Short, sweet, and to the point. Why do so many people hate the Jews?
Okay.
I know you want to joke, right? You just want to tell a joke, right?
I think there's I believe there's three categories in hatred towards Jews. One of them, or two categories, and the second one has two parts in it. The first one is they're okay with the Jews existing. They just want to enslave the Jews, like Pharaoh and maybe Nebuchadnezzar and so on, that they kept the Jews alive, they just enslaved them. And the second one is that they don't want the Jews to exist. I'd like to note that to those that hate the Jews and they don't want them to exist, this is something natural that's found within them. and won't change by reaction by those that, again, it's going to spread, but by the core people, it will not change whether you act good or bad. And the reason is as follows. The reason for their hatred, as explained in a talk that Rabbi at the Rabbi in 1965, was two categories. One of them was that they feel like the world is a place for them. The Jews belong to another place. They belong to a spiritual plane, maybe, or I don't know what. They're some kind of different type of people, and they don't belong here. They're in my field. If they exist here, they're taking away my space, and I can't handle them here. And therefore, they don't want them to be here. Period. Whether they're going to be enslaved or not enslaved, they don't want them. Period. And the second one is, this is what's brought down in the Talmud, that from when the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, we're in the Shavuos now, hatred to the Jews had come. And the reason is because once we were given the Torah, although nobody else wanted to accept the Torah, it's only because they didn't want to be, undertake its limitations. You know, they wanted to be free and do what they want, but they still see that there's something important about the Torah, something meaningful, something deeper. And by them not having it, them seeing the Jews do have it, it makes them feel a sense of emptiness. And they cannot get rid of it. They see something special there. And the only way they can get rid of that feeling is by getting rid of the Jews. I haven't read too much about the one that conducted the Second World War, but from what little bit I've heard around, it sounded like something along those lines as well, some kind of moral something that the Jews had brought, and it's something we have to get rid of. So those are the two general reasons why perhaps the Arabs in Israel, some of the Arabs at least in Israel, don't want Israel, empty from rid of it. They feel like the Jews are in their place. They maybe fall into the first category of it's not going to help whether the Jews are enslaved or not enslaved. They want them out. They want them gone, period. So those are the two types of
Thank you very much. Rabbi Hanoka, what is the secret to self-worth? I guess they think the rabbis have the answers to everything.
Secret or nothing. What is the secret to self-worth? By contemplating the fact that God, who's an infinite being, for lack of a better term, who is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, etc., found it in his infinite wisdom necessary to create little me, who is but barely a microscopic speck in the big spectrum of the universe, and yet still in all what I do, apparently my performance of mitzvot and study of Torah makes God happy and ultimately appeases God. For that in and of itself, to think that little me, somehow I'm able to affect some cosmic, thing going on in the heavens, in and of itself accentuates my and anyone else's self-worth.
Beautifully said. Rabbi Rivkin, if you could go back to any time in Jewish history, which moment or event would be your choice and why?
So first of all, I'm not so sure I'd want to go back in Jewish history. I think we find ourselves in a pretty incredible moment in Jewish history right now. Just considering all the amazing things that we have today and the fact that very soon Mashiach is going to come. So I wouldn't want to go back in history. But if you push me to the wall, is there a part of Jewish history that I want to go back to? I would say the era of King Solomon during the First Temple. Because first of all, you have the beauty and the glory of Judaism in the land of Israel, the first Beis Hamikdash, the holiness. It was also a very peaceful time. It was a very moral time. It was a time of Jewish prominence and success, materially and spiritually. But otherwise, I think this is an amazing time to live, and we should take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we move on, let me just remind everybody, I see some people have been raising their hands and different things like that. If you'd like to ask a question, once we get through the ones that were pre-submitted, we will open the floor for as much time as we have. We're going to go until about 10:45 or until people start dropping, until people start falling asleep at the screen. So if you'd like to submit a question, the best way to do so is in the Zoom chat. If you'd like to text it to me, you can do that as well. If you don't want to post it publicly in the Zoom chat, there is a way to do so privately. If you're so proficient in Zoom, you're welcome to use that feature. Rabbi Pinson, I do not keep every Shabbat, every Shabbos, but was thinking of keeping it once a month. but my sister tells me that's hypocritical and that it's all or nothing. The question is not, is she wrong? The question is, why is she wrong? That's how the question was phrased.
She's definitely wrong. So when someone decides to take a mitzvah, if he's gonna, many times, if they decide to jump and do, take on the entire mitzvah, like keep Shabbos every week, then eventually it will come crashing down and they won't be able to keep going. It will just be too difficult. So if they're approaching, accepting on new mitzvahs, that they're taking it one step at a time, then it's definitely not hypocritical. It's actually a very good idea to grow in Judaism like that. And even if someone is planning on keeping Shabbos only once a month forever, and they're not planning on making that big step, it's still not a bad thing in essence, because it doesn't really define bad decisions don't define who we are. We are Jews. We have a holy neshama. We have a soul, and everything good we do is going to just add goodness to to keep doing more mitzvahs. So it's I think in essence every single mitzvah we do is valuable, and no one should ever take that away because of the thought that they're being hypocritical. Just keep adding.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Stolik, for various personal, sorry, we did that question already. I don't know why I had it down for you and for Rabbi Hanoka. So we'll give you a different one. Hold on. It just came in. Rabbi Stolik, how has the advent of technology changed us?
In which aspect? Someone specify the fact that we're stuck to our
That's
iPhone?
the whole question. That's the whole question.
It enabled us, number one, to teach Torah to the whole world in one moment. So you can have everybody here as Hershy at your class in the whole world.
That's a little ironic question to be asking on a Zoom, huh? I guess, let me choose as the moderator. I'll take the liberty to rephrase the question. Do you think the advent of technology is a positive or a negative thing? In other words, has it changed us positively or negatively or both? What can you give us on that in 30 seconds more?
Just as with anything, there's a positive and a negative side to it. We have to use for the positive. A lot of negativity has happened through the web. A lot of positivity can happen through the web. Obviously, a lot of negativity has happened, and we have to increase in our goodness and somehow to combat this negativity that has happened. As the Rabbi said, many, many instances, the more negativity has grown, the more we have to increase and find more ways and increase holiness. On the other hand, we have to use every opportunity possible to use all this technology for something positive.
Thank you. Rabbi Hanoka, why should I tell my child no or make rules when it makes them angry and not like me? Isn't my relationship with my child the most important thing?
It is. I'll just try to make it simple. When God created the world, he created it essentially with a combination of both chesed and gevura, of kindness and severity or judgment. What we would actually call it is that of tzimtzum, gevura, which translates directly as strength, really means discipline. In essence, where God gives us rules and regulations as a form of discipline by which we're meant to serve him. Invariably, discipline in and of itself is a great thing. It's something which is healthy in anybody's life. Obviously, when it comes to teaching our children and disciplining our children in a healthy way, but at times not everything should be yes, because that's not going to be disciplining anybody. And all the more so when it comes to internal discipline, it's something which is very healthy. So the short answer of it is that ultimately at times by saying no, you're displaying kindness to your children and not displaying, indifference or negativity.
All right. Thank you.
I can add something
Beautifully
to that.
said. Rabbi Stolik, go ahead.
I wanted to add something to that. I think if you, the question at the end was, does this make my child, I don't know what the word was, hate me or something? Something like that.
It's on my phone, hold on.
Doesn't count, does it?
Well, why should I tell my child no or make rules when it makes them angry and not like me? Isn't my relationship with my child the most important thing?
Okay, and so they're saying that it can make them not like me. If something strict is done with the true intent, and I think I can say maybe it's important to even say this beforehand if you're doing something strict. Maybe a phrase like this: God has entrusted me You are an individual human being. God has given me the responsibility to educate you. And I am obligated to do as I see fit, using my proper senses, trying to do the truth. God has obligated me to sometimes use strength, and I'm obligated to do this. If you're totally not in the picture, I believe this should not increase the feeling of not liking. In the contrary, it should increase trust that you're really thinking about him. If it's for real, you're not just acting impulsive. But I think it should do the opposite.
So to clarify, you're suggesting to say that to the child or to meditate upon this yourself?
Both. I think it may be important in some cases to actually say a short statement like that to the child directly before you have to do something.
Thank you. Rabbi Rivkin, in a religious community, can a man and woman just be friends? Can you share with us Judaism's understanding of friendship?
So you have really two separate questions here. One is...
I was thinking the same thing as I was reading
Judaism's understanding of friendship. And then the first question is about male-female relationships and friendships. So which one should we focus on in 60 seconds?
I guess let's focus on the male-female relationship, and then let's talk about, can there be a friendship between a male and female, because it seems to be set up by that. So let's take it that way.
So I think the approach that Judaism takes is that we should appreciate the potency and the power of a male-female friendship / relationship. That God, one of the greatest gifts that God gave us in human nature is the ability for a man and woman to build a life together and build a family together and make each other incredibly happy. We know that people who are in a good relationship, in a marriage, live longer, are healthier, and so on. And there's tremendous power there. And that power needs to be treated with a lot of respect, right? You know, here in California, we're always taught, we teach the kids, fire is very powerful. You have to respect the fire. The firemen always say, you got to respect the flames, right? So the question is fire good or bad? And the answer is yes. It's good and bad, depending on if it's controlled, it can bring warmth and light and a tremendous energy to power things. And if it's uncontrolled, it can be incredibly destructive. Same thing, a male-female relationship is very, very powerful. It can be powerful in a beautiful way, and it can also be very destructive. So therefore, in a religious community where we're trying to follow the Torah, and the Torah is given to us so we should have beautiful lives, Torah's ways are ways of pleasantness, this is an area of life that we treat with tremendous respect, and we're very careful and gentle with such a relationship and even such a friendship.
Thank you very much. Rabbi
Now, if you want to give me
Pinson.
another 60 seconds for an analysis of friendship, that's a separate discussion.
Rabbi Pinson, maybe we should talk about that soon. Rabbi Pinson, we definitely need to get to the questions that people are submitting now. We have 3 more questions, and then we'll take questions from the floor. Rabbi Pinson, I know we live in an I generation. Oh, this is this questioner waxes a little poetic here. I know we live in an I generation because I have an iPhone, an iPad, an iMac, and even an iWatch. Along these lines, does Judaism have anything to say about selfies? I'm going to assume the question is about self-centeredness, although the questioner doesn't really ask a question. Spent a lot of time phrasing the question, but didn't really ask the question. Go ahead.
I think I'm going to take the question as a question about is it important to focus on the individual, or do we have to focus on being together as a Jewish people, as a unit? So there's actually, it's connected with Shavuos. When the Jewish people were at Mount Sinai, it says in the verse, and he, the Jewish people, referring to the Jewish people, and he camped at the foot of the mountain. And Rashi comments that it says he, even though it's many people, because ish echad b'lev echad, they were all, it was one man with one heart. They were all there for one purpose, with brotherhood. So it's very important as a Jewish people throughout the generations. We have had persecution, and we have to survive by staying together. On the other hand, we have to realize that in order to fulfill out, whatever we need to do, we can't rely on everyone else, taking the stand. We have to step up to the plate and do what needs to. Like the Rambam said, we have to envision the world like it's a scale balanced on each side, good and evil. And every good deed we do, with just one good deed, we can tip the scale, and redemption can come. So we need to have equally balanced thing. mindset of, I guess, iPhone, right? That I'm important, and also us together as a whole can accomplish a lot.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Rabbi Stolik, I have to give a little bit of an introduction to the next question. The next question was not submitted for this Crossfire. It was submitted for a prior Crossfire. I don't remember if it was at a Shabbat of Torah or last year Shavuot. And during the year, Rabbi Stolik came over to me to share with me that he has more to add on this topic. So we're going to feed, and I think he got the question then, and he'll get the question again now. If any of the other rabbis want to jump in, you're welcome to. How do you prevent a daily prayer or routine from becoming mindless action and keep the spirituality alive? Rabbi Stolik.
Thank you very much. You reminded me that I did have something to add. I forgot about that.
Right.
Yes. So what I did say last time, again in short, was that there has to be learning before the prayer to warm you up. I did say there has to be meditation before and during prayer to enhance your prayer. And I did say that one should focus on a little piece of your prayer every day, on a different piece. Every day a paragraph, and the next day the next paragraph, and the next day the next paragraph. So you're really focusing every day on a different piece. And it's only going over the cycle, either it's going to be once a month or once in 2 months. So really it's not actually the same every day. But aside for that, that's what I said last time. And right after that question, I happened to come across another letter of the Rabbi, which added another point to that question, and that is that the Rabbi points out that prayer is actually supposed to be individualized. Now that may seem very opposite of what we see, because we always have the same siddur. But the Rebbe proves that prayer is actually supposed to be very individual as possible. And the reason, the proof that the Rebbe says is we don't pray one prayer. We don't just say, God, give us everything we need. If it was just about, if we just had to give a general, we just say, God, please give us everything we need. No, the rabbis have taught us to give everything, to break down as much as we can, which shows it's about individualized. Now, that being said, just teaches us the general idea. The rabbis have just helped us break it down. But really, it's supposed to be highly individualized. Every single person is supposed to individualize the prayer as much as he can, according to his feelings, according to his needs, according to his situation. They just gave us a starting point, a language to help us direct our thoughts and direct our, and to use as well. But on top of that, we have to add our personal thoughts. So prayer is also almost primarily individual. And this was just given to us as a help. We use obviously every day, and we do use these words, but behind those general words have to be is important, fundamentally important, that we have our personality and personal things involved in that as well.
Can I just throw something in? Rabbi, go
ahead, 45 seconds.
I just want a quick thing. I think you may be somewhat akin, if I can use the example, as to that of exercising. Before you exercise, you got to do your warm-ups, your stretches, etc., to make sure that the exercise itself is done in a proper way, in a healthy way. As an avid runner myself, I used to do 3 Ironmans a year, and now I'm down to 1, age-related. But notwithstanding, as I'm told from the religious runners, it becomes addictive. Now, to your average person, you say running is exciting. I mean, you say you run the same path every day. You run the same 6-10 miles every day. It's got to be boring. You just did it again, again, and again. As I'm told, I don't know this from personal experience, but people who do run, who do certain types of exercises, you literally get into it. It becomes addictive. You look forward to it on a daily basis. While your average couch potato would, in a sense, just thinking about running around the block is exhausting. So the same thing would apply with davening. Obviously, the more a person gets into prayer, into davening, the more you begin to appreciate what's there. And in essence, you can really begin to look forward to the words that you recite on a daily basis, even though they may be the same words every day.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Hanoka. The next question is for you. How can I monitor my child's use of technology? The next statement is, I cannot spy on them. I guess it's supposed to be like, without spying on them. How can I monitor my child's use of technology without spying on them?
By sticking your head in the sand. Without spying on them, I mean, the only way to monitor, that's a kind of a big word over here. I mean, there's all types of, I'm not familiar with every single type of app that's available, either to monitor or to minimize what they're able to access online. But you do your best, obviously, by putting all types of, what do they call them? Not firewalls,
Filters.
Sorry?
Filters. Yeah,
filters, etc., to filter and obviously talk to your kids about being careful online, because there's so much potential for I guess, spiritual and physical danger online. So it's well worth having a conversation with your kids about it.
I just got Tech Lock and Circle, whoever's interested.
These are app recommendations. This is another segment. You guys have crossed into another segment. App
Having
recommendations by the
advertisements.
rabbis.
Is this a paid sponsor?
It is now.
Do any of the other rabbis have something else they want to chime in on besides for app recommendations? Okay. Last question is for Rabbi Rivkin. We hear a lot about having God in your life and even loving him. How can I love him if I'm not even sure he exists? Ooh. 60 seconds.
So this was an actual questioner, huh? Good question. So, you know, it's interesting. The assumption of the question is that we only love things when it makes sense. And I think the opposite is true. Many of us can think of things that we love which don't necessarily make sense. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. I think we can all think of that relationship, that marriage, where we thought to ourselves, how does this work? How does this one love this one? And the answer is love is blind. The beauty of love is that it's an emotion. And emotions don't necessarily make sense. And so in our relationship with Hashem, there are two dimensions. There's the part of us that is intellectual and that struggles and that philosophizes and questions and answers and so on. And that's what Jews have done for millennia. And we struggle with our faith, and we have our questions and so on, and we have our doubts. And then there's love. And the beauty of love is that you can even love something when it doesn't make sense. Obviously, if the intellect can complement what you love, then that is an enhancer. But it's not a prerequisite for love that it has to make sense.
Okay.
I'm going to add, if I can add, there's a famous story that I'm sure all the rabbis know about. Somebody once came, I think it was to the third Chabad Rabbi, the Tzemach Tzedek, and told him, Rabbi, what should I do? I have doubts in the Creator. I have doubts in my belief. So the Rabbi said, what's the problem? He says, what do you mean, what's the problem? Rabbi, I'm Jewish. What do you mean? He said, what's the problem? So the Rabbi pointed out that obviously the fact that he was bothered by it was because he knew that he believed. He just didn't know how to. I want to point out that the questioner is saying the same thing. He says, how can I love? What should I do? I forgot the wording exactly, but he's saying,
how can I love him if I'm not even sure he exists? It says we hear a lot about loving God, having God in your life and even loving him. How can I love him if I'm not even sure he exists?
So the questioner wants to love God, and he has maybe doubts sometimes. And so he wants to love God. He's not sure what to do. He's primarily believing. To add one small detail is we have to differentiate. The Tanya talks about doubts that are false doubts. Meaning to say, a small example would be if you had a startup company and you had to do something really difficult. So you made the decision that you're going for it. The moment you go for it, you're going to have 1,000 doubts. Am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right direction? Right now, you made the decision, you're going for it. You got to go full force, full steam ahead. Don't let any doubts come into your mind. These doubts are just here to slow you down. To a Jew, belief is natural. And a lot of these doubts are not coming from you really doubt. It's just because there's blockages coming our way, and they're not, if you really able to understand them correctly, you know that they're just a form of depression, a form of weakness. It's not a true doubt.
Thank you very much. Sarah Schulman asks, we're moving to questions in the chat and that have been texted, etc. Sarah Schulman asks, can you type the questions in the chat? Meaning, could you repeat the questions in the chat for those of us who are going back and forth? I apologize, Mrs. Schulman, I only saw your message now. It would have been difficult to do in any event. Dr. Ashina Achaban asks, what is the significance of the beard? Rabbi Stolik, you're going to get this one. You're stroking now. If it is so important, how come some very legitimate Orthodox rabbis shave? Rabbi Stolik, you want to take this one, or should we?
Whoever you designated to.
So let's go. You just answered one. Let's go back to the top of the cycle. Rabbi Hanoka, what is the significance of the beard? If it is so important, how come some very legitimate Orthodox rabbis shave?
Hasidic Jews in particular have less time on their hands, and shaving obviously takes 5-10 minutes every morning. So we opt out that way.
Said no more jokes.
That was very serious about that. What is the spiritual significance of the beard? It's explained in Kabbalistic literature on one foot here that the beard represents or brings down, or I guess it's what's called the 13 strands of the beard, even though there's more than 13 strands, but metaphorically, the 13 strands of the beard, in a sense, elicit and bring down the 13 attributes of mercy from above, from God. We all need merciful abundance from God and all the blessings that come along with that. And somehow by growing a beard in and of itself and leaving the corners unshaven, the corners of the face, as the Torah commands us to do, it brings down those blessings in a bountiful way. Why do other Orthodox rabbis shave? Well, in reality, to be honest with you, shaving is a leniency. It is not the optimum. It is a leniency that that people rely on. They do not shave with razors. That's biblically prohibited. They use electric shavers that have more like a scissor type of cutting mechanism. And it's a leniency. It's not something which is accepted by everybody, although there are people that do. And I can't speak to as to why some people decide that they want to keep their beard and why others don't. That's a spiritual preference of their own. So I'm going to leave that for the people who shave to tell you why they shave.
Rabbi Pinson, next question we have in the chat. Is it true that the world will end after 6,000 years of Jewish years? How do we, for context for those watching, we are in the year 5,780. Is it true that the world will end after 6,000 years of Jewish years? How do we know that? Can that be changed through prayer?
So I'm not actually entirely sure what the answer is, but I can just speak a little bit about the idea of the 6,000 year, what it symbolizes, and maybe one of the other rabbis can give the complete answer. Every day of the 6,000 years represents one of the 6 days of creation. And then on the 7th day, God rested. And so after 6,000 years, there's like this, I think there's like this rest, like Mashiach coming. And yeah, anyone else want to add anything?
Okay. Any other rabbis want to jump in on this? Don't all speak at once. Rabbi Rivkin, you want to jump in?
Sure. I mean, I think it's just worth adding perhaps that if you look at the end of 6,000 years as being the era of Mashiach, of redemption, you know, the 6,000, the 6 millennia correspond to the 6 days of the week, and then we go into the era of Mashiach, which is Shabbos. So we actually find ourselves Friday afternoon, really, really close to Shabbos, and there are actually many customs that we do. For example, we taste of the food of Shabbos on Friday afternoon. And so therefore it makes sense that already now, before the coming of Mashiach, we begin to experience certain things that remind us that Mashiach is on the way. I mean, as much as the media likes to focus on negativity and how the world is coming to an end, we actually live in an incredible world in terms of prosperity and relative peace and eradication of hunger and poverty. And these are all prophecies. If you look at Isaiah's prophecies of 2,500 years ago, this is exactly what was predicted will happen as we come closer to Mashiach. So we're Friday afternoon, we're getting closer and closer. And by the way, we know with Shabbos, you can bring in Shabbos early. You don't have to wait until the end of the 6,000 years. Mashiach can come right away.
Okay, as the moderator, I'm gonna suggest that I think there's one more thing we haven't answered from this question. I'll leave that to Rabbi Hanoka. I'll pose this part to Rabbi Hanoka. Both Rabbi Rivkin and Rabbi Pinson immediately jumped to Mashiach. The questioner actually didn't use the word Mashiach, and the phrase that was used is it true that the world will end after 6,000 years of Jewish years? Rabbi Hanoka, do you want to speak a little bit about the difference, or what it means? What does Mashiach mean? Is the world going to end when Mashiach comes, and what exactly is that?
It is not the apocalypse. It is not the apocalypse, so because of the terminology which are used nowadays. The world ends. The world will end it as we know it today, per se, in a sense where we do still have a world of pain and affliction and suffering. Granted, to a large part, hunger has been eradicated from good parts of the world, but there's still sickness and many other things which are not gone, which will be gone when Mashiach comes. It does say when Mashiach comes that there'll be eternal life for the Jewish people anyway, and that all of our loved ones will be brought back to this world through the resurrection of the dead, which is a very Jewish concept, you know, where the other people got it from. So that's obviously going to change things. Just the notion of having people who have passed on for thousands of years come back to this world, our loved ones, our leaders, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rabbi, Aaron, you know, so on and so forth, is in and of itself going to be a very different world. And also just our whole purpose of living our whole focus of living when Mashiach comes will be to serve God. That's something which we will innately want to do. Unlike today where we have to battle the forces of evil from within, all the naysayers, the voices inside saying, no, don't do it, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Those will be gone when Mashiach comes. And to conclude from the book of Zechariah, where it says when the Mashiach comes, God says that he will remove the spirits of impurity from the world forever. So basically anything associated with impurity, hence what we call evil, bad, whatever the story may be, pain, affliction, sickness, will be gone for all eternity. And it will be a life of, I guess you would like to call it bliss, but basically a life on a whole different plane, whole different level of living than we have today.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to, there's someone who typed 2 questions. Marguerite, if you can rephrase your question about not sticking to stigma, that people actually hate us. Maybe that's just comments on one of the prior questions. But her second question, can I say Modeh Ani before washing my hands at AM? I guess it means in the morning. Can I say Modeh Ani before washing my hands in the morning? Rabbi Stolik.
Can I say Modeh Ani before washing my hands in the AM? 100%. You were supposed to do that. The famous statement that Modeh Ani represents the essence of a Jew, which cannot be become impure even by the impure hand. It's something that it cannot make impure. So Modeh Ani can be said, even and should be said as soon as you wake up, even before you wash your hands. It sounds like you skipped the first part of her question, something about stigma about Jews. What was that?
I'm not sure. I think it was more comments than question. And I think basically if we would have seen it live, it was while you were addressing hatred. What she writes is, we cannot stick to stigma that people hate us. Why? Because so many people now understand and appreciate Jews. Look at the president's actions, setting embassy in Jerusalem. I think those are mainly statements, not question. If you want to address that.
So I want to add one thing. This was my question.
Right. So
100%. As I said, I think I stated clearly that this is not a rule for non-Jews, for every non-Jew. On the contrary, we know that there are Jews there are non-Jews that help Jews, and there are Jews that try to help us in any way possible. There are non-Jews that look to help us and are happy that we're doing okay, and so on. I'm addressing the fact that there is going to be, and until Mashiach comes, and there always was an idea, a group of people which had a hatred to the Jewish people, regardless of what we will do or have done or will change. It's a natural, innate hatred that's not going to change no matter what. And that's something that always existed. And if you look, we know that because just so we know anything else in the Torah, there's actually a verse that says, Halacha Esav son of Yaakov. We have a tradition that Esav hates Yaakov until Mashiach will come. And that's a fact that we know from the Torah. And we actually have seen that throughout the ages, that in every single generation, there were always people that hated Jews. And again, that does not apply to everybody at all, just applying to the fact that it does exist.
Thank you. This question was addressed by the author at Rabbi Hanoka, so it's perfect. We're at the top of the lineup anyways. Rabbi Hanoka, if the 600,000 souls are from the 600,000 male Jews at Mount Sinai, and each soul has to incarnate to learn a lesson, do the souls start dropping off when they have completed their learning? I.e., if they learn at different rates, do they go down from 600,000 until they get to 1? Or do they all get to the point where they have learned their lessons at the same time? As an example, does Moshe Rabbeinu's soul have less to learn than other Jews, than that of other Jews? Would that soul's journey be shorter? I know that was a long and winded question, but speak to that point.
I will answer that with the equation of pi. First and foremost, the notion of the 600,000 souls in its inception starts with the fact that God, when he created the world, created 600,000 general souls, as the Kabbalah tells us, of which each one, there's basically 600,000 to the 600,000th souls that will be created. I don't know what that number is, but anybody who's awake enough can try and figure it out. My calculator doesn't go that far. That's how many souls there are. So invariably, each grouping of 600,000 soul has a connection to one soul in its inception, initially at the beginning of creation, which connect to Adam, to the first man to be created. And yes, there were 600,000 men who were at Mount Sinai, and everything is interconnected one way or the other. But to answer your question in short, as to how long somebody has to live or not live is a question that I can answer, only God can. In terms of reincarnation, yes, it does say that each soul has to have fulfilled all the 613 commandments through various reincarnates to bring itself to fruition. However many people / souls or portions of souls that will take, it's probably rare, if at all, going to happen with one person. Perhaps it does in very rare circumstances, but for most people it's not, and we are reincarnates of various other people prior to us, thus trying to bring to fulfillment the whole purpose of creation of that initial soul. So it can take, it can take a lifetime, it can take multiple lifetimes, it can take 20 lifetimes. There's no book, unfortunately, that you can buy that will tell you who you were in your last reincarnation. You can speak to your local Kabbalists, and for the right fee, they might be able to figure something out for you. They usually hang out in Venice Beach, and they'll read your palm first, and then they can tell you who was your incarnate beforehand.
Thank you very much. The last question, and it is getting late, and we actually overtime. We said we were going to stop at 10:45. The last question will be addressed to Rabbi Rivkin. I'm actually noticing also the amount of people on the call. We started off the Stump The Rabbi session with 50. Now we're at 25. So Rabbi Rivkin, last question. Are we not welcoming Hashem to our world during the time of the Mashiach? Let's phrase it as a positive. Is Mashiach us welcoming Hashem into the world? And do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yes, that's exactly what Mashiach is. I don't know if the word welcoming or the word is revealing that which already exists. There's an interesting statement brought down in the teachings of the sages that there's no difference between this world and the world to come, the time of Mashiach, other than a change of monarchy. And the way we understand that is, according to Chassidus, is that it appears, and I emphasize the word, it appears. That's not the reality, but it appears as if the world is separate from its godly root. And bringing Mashiach, and what will ultimately happen when Mashiach comes, is that it will be revealed in every single thing in the world. And certainly every single person will recognize the fact that Hashem is the source of all life and of all of existence. So yes, Mashiach is welcoming God into the world.
Thank you very, very much. And what a way to end our Crossfire Stump the Rabbi. May we merit very soon to see Mashiach and to see Hashem and godliness in a revealed manner in this world, exactly as the answer to that question was. Thank you all for joining us. Let's get a tremendous round of applause for our panelists and those that are still here. And I'm sure those that had to retire earlier, it's just because they want to go to sleep, but they would have stayed throughout the whole thing.